Okay. Would you prefer to...
Yeah, I will tell you maybe about our life in that hiding, which had a very surreal, I would say, character. Because imagine the corridors and the rooms of the monastery packed with books. Packed not with hundreds, not with thousands, but with millions of books. Some of them very ancient books. Many of these were handwritten manuscripts. Things of the Tsar administration of centuries, bound all of them in cloth, bound in linen. We were taking off the linen from those bindings in order to make for ourselves shoes, because we had to walk very silently. We were not supposed to talk, because we were not supposed to make any noise whatsoever. Sometimes I remember there was, I think it was Dr. Libo, who at night had some nightmares, and he would scream in his nightmare. And we were terrified when he had nightmares, because it was frightening to think that somebody might have heard from that area of the monastery where all these books are, where nobody's supposed to live, at night some noise. Now we would go out at night to wash a little and to the toilets. Now we were hidden at the last part of a very long corridor with a wall of books that looked as if the books were all thrown against the wall, and behind that there was a space left. And so every evening it was a matter of digging a tunnel throughout the books and then making a whole construction with a rope put into the books, that once we were back in our hiding, the rope would be pulled, it would cause the falling down of all the books, and it seemed as if nobody was there. This was how we were hidden. And then we had, of course, we had a night pot for cases of emergency, that somebody could not control himself and needed it. So every night we were walking in the darkness. Even a candle was forbidden at night. So we were walking in a row, each one holding his hand on the other. The one who had the best sight in the darkness was the first, who knew by heart how to walk. This is the way we were walking through the corridor to the toilet. And this is how we would come back. And if I'm laughing now because a very ridiculous thing happened, they have once forgotten the night pot outside. And when we realized that, we had to dig in the middle of the daylight, taking a terrible chance that we may be discovered in order to recapture this object, which would have, of course, immediately shown that somebody is hiding there. There was also a problem with cooking. There was no possibility of cooking. We could only eat raw things. I remember we ate raw rice, for instance. We ate raw grains or such things, because it was impossible to cook, because we could only whisper. They were reading books, so they were whispering the books. Dr. Libo had books, and he was reading books. But he was reading, and we were more reading his lips than listening really to what he was saying. So this was a very strange existence, because our beds were made of books, and we were changing the sheets every day by simply tearing off the pages. So they would put up, a bed was that high, and after about a few weeks it became lower and lower, because we were tearing off pages of some manuscripts that were 200 years old, and that were transactions of acquisition of land, of acquisition of slaves, of souls in that time they were called, and so on. And from time to time, Jaszunski, the journalist who was a historian and so on, he was changing the sheets of his bed, and all of a sudden he was saying, wait, but this is a miraculous document, but this proves that in the reign of Nikolai I, and this is how we lived, and this is how we lived, and then, as I told you, we came out into the freedom, a freedom which was, of course, not as dangerous, but was very relative. And we had to get out from there to Poland, because as former Polish citizenship owners, we had the right to leave Vilna, that became Vilnius, and go to Poland. But by that time, my mother was working for the Russian authorities. By that time, she was obliged to be a witness in a staged trial against her former boss, and she had no right to leave the town. So in a very clandestine way, everything was prepared for us to go to Poland with one of the trains. My mother pretending to be sick and so on. We got on the train and we went to Poland, and we crossed the border again, like in dramas of bad taste, 20 minutes before the authorities came to arrest her and search for her. The train after ours, where some friends of ours were traveling, was already searched for my mother, because she was told to be a witness, and she was even told what to tell and so on. So another miracle happened. And then we arrived to Lodz. And from Lodz, of course, this is the Vilna part of my life, is finished in some way. But yes, there is still another small direct relationship to Vilna many years later. I had an exhibition in Israel in '66. And then there was a visit in Israel of the director of the municipal theater of, the municipal museum of Vilna. And one day they telephoned to me from the Russian embassy, saying that there is somebody who would like to come and visit me. And this man came and he said, Mr. Bach, I'm overwhelmed. I discovered that you're alive. I discovered that you're here. We have in the museum a book of the Jewish community, in which on one side there are drawings of a child that were made in the ghetto of Vilna, and it was found with stains of blood in the camp Hakape, after all the people there were liquidated. And we have it. And all of a sudden I discovered that you're here. So if ever you're interested, we will send you some photographs of it and so on. I was amazed, and it was very scary. I wasn't sure I want to see it. I wasn't sure I want to see those photographs. I said, one day, maybe one day I'll come back to Vilna, I'll visit it, I'll have a look at it. And then a few months later, in '67, there was the 6 Days War. The Russian embassy and so on left. The relationship with Russia, of course, was completely broken until a short time ago, when they have reestablished diplomatic relationship. And my contact with this man died. But I'm sure that this book is somewhere, and if one day I have the courage to go to Vilna and have the courage to visit those places and have the courage to go and look at this book, it's still waiting for me.
Have you been tempted now to return?
Yes, I'm very tempted to return. For years I thought I shall never find in me the the courage, the energy, and so on. I thought I'll be sick. I'll collapse before. But I think that with the time, I think that one builds up a certain strength. I don't know. I feel today that I'm ready to undertake this trip, and maybe next year so I'm going. The problem is that I still have a child's memory of Vilna. I mean, I remember very well the house where I lived, but I cannot remember how to go from there to my grandparents. But I guess that maybe once I'm there, my feet will take me. And they're not my head, but my feet. Maybe. Well, this will be an experience to undertake. But today, I don't know. I'm tempted. I'm tempted. But I'm also quite afraid of it. I don't know.
In terms of your life as an artist, or your life to a degree, how does Vilna figure in that?
Well, not a specific Vilna. I think it's not a matter of a specific Vilna. I think it is my experience of the Holocaust has really shaped me. This was my education, my universities, if you wish, were the experience of surviving this terrible reality. So I think I had no choice. The vision of a world in the state of catastrophe and the certain wish to repair and to restore somehow with very limited means. All these things, they are part of the story that I'm telling in all of my paintings. So I very much object to such terms as Holocaust art, or I mean, the banalization of the thing is something that disturbs me very much. And I don't think I could ever attempt to do any things which show things of the Holocaust in a very direct way. So they must be somewhere transcended in a stylized or a metaphorical way. But this experience, I mean, this is what I am. I'm just what I am. So my art can be only what I am. And so the story of this experience is coming through, I think, in all that I'm doing. But, you know, there is such a thing as the survivor's syndrome. I mean, people feel sometimes terribly guilty and they try somehow to find a special reason for their life when they are among the chosen ones who survive very difficult situations, whether they were prisoners from Korea or Vietnam or Holocaust survivors. There are certain mechanics. I think that art, since it has a very therapeutic power in it, helped me a lot to come to terms with reality, with being a father and a husband and a friend and so on. I think it helped me. I think it helped me a lot. I mean, whenever I have to spend a week without painting, I feel that painting for me is like drugs. It's really something very important. So all this has to do most probably with my way of surviving. And my art is certainly, I see it as a very Jewish art because it is simply rooted in a Jewish experience of this century. But not specifically, I would not say specifically a Vilna experience. What is of Vilna in my art, maybe, is that Vilna was a very intellectual city, and the possibility to integrate these experiences through an intellectual way and getting a certain distance from yourself, which you cannot if you're only emotionally involved in things, is maybe something of the Vilna tradition, I don't know, of the Vilna specificity. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know, since I'm from Vilna, so I was taught that I'm exceptional, but at the same time I have to consider it that anybody in the world who is good is as if he came from Vilna, you see. So that's how it is.
Wonderful. Let's stop. Do you need to? Because we're almost.
Yeah, we are.
Tell us about the wonderful Vilna by night.
Now, this is it's not something that I have really personally lived through, but it was told to me by my mother, and this. I must have been then most probably a child of 2 or 3. But it gives something of the spirit of Vilna. Well, one day in the newspapers, there was a big announcement, come and see the unforgettable experience of Vilna at night. And people were rather curious to know what it was about, because the address there was in a small street of Old Town, and the hour to see Vilna by night and so on was something like 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was obvious that not many people will come there. And my parents, who enjoyed life very much and went out very often to nightclubs and dancing and so on, they decided, coming out from one of those places, they will see, it's curious, it's interesting enough. And it did not cost very much. There was even a price indicated, something like 1 or 2 zloty and so on. And when they came to that address to see Vilna by night, there was an incredible number of people queuing up to go in. And every time there were only 2 people coming into the house and 2 people coming out. And every time the 2 people who came out were smiling or laughing and were feeling very happy and would never tell anybody what was going on. So they decided to wait. They decided to wait, and they waited and waited. They waited for half an hour until their turn came. And then they went into this house, and somebody took them. Very, very narrow, dark staircase to an upper floor. There was a tiny apartment, very dark. There was a room with a window, and the window gave on a courtyard. In the courtyard, there was this small outdoor toilet that was in most of the houses, and there was the sky with the moon shining and some stars. And the man said, "This is Vilna at night." And they felt so silly, and yet it was so funny. And they felt at the same time angry, and yet they wanted the people who were waiting there to go and, like them, be fooled. That exactly like all the other people before, when they came out, they would not say what they have seen. They would not say anything. and little by little, the man who had this idea of showing Vilna at night, which was actually Vilna at night, they had made their bunch of zloty, and this is how the story finished.
Good. In conclusion, would you tell us, looking forward, what are your present plans, projects? What do you want to do in the future?
Oh, I have a lot of paintings still in my head, which have not been put on canvas. So my idea is to paint as many paintings as possible. A painter needs, in order to paint, some decent conditions of life and of space and of health and so on. So I think this is what I'm actually interested in, is just to take out from myself, because whatever happens to me and however I succeed to produce even the most unbelievable number of paintings, I know that there is quite a number of images that will one day disappear with my disappearance. So I would like just to limit this number of images as much as I can. I think as a painter, I feel exactly like any other painter. Just produce, 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 produce.
Is there any image in your head that has been there for a long time that you've never satisfactorily been able to express?
Oh, there are. I think that everything can be always done better and better and better. And right now I'm working on a project which is going to take up 3-4 years of my life, which is taking all the subjects which are very typically Jewish in a very emblematic way, which I mean the symbols, the emblems of the Jewish forms, like the Star of David, the yellow star, which was part of what we had to wear, or the tablets of the law, or the candles, and so on. All these very typical emblems of the Jewish language, and describe them in the light of the events that have transformed the world. Now, I have done these things already 20 years ago and 10 years ago in smaller scale. I would like to give these things a certain monumentality. I think that size has to do with it. And the preparation of a large exhibition of these Jewish themes is today one of the important things that takes up all my energies. So this is where I stand today.
Finally, as a Jew who was not really raised as a traditional Jew and who certainly had a very intense flirtation with Catholicism and so on, how would you describe your own sense, what it means, what it is to be a Jew? What is your own sense?
Now, yeah, it's very interesting that you're asking me to solve a question over which the Israeli parliament caused a government to give its demission. There's no answer to that. I mean, there is absolutely no possibility to know what it is to be a Jew and what it means to be a Jew and so on. You have 100 Jews, you have about 150 answers, because at least 50 of them are sufficiently Jewish to have 2 answers to every question. Now, I personally was very lucky that I came to Israel and I was educated in Israel, and I got a good knowledge, fair knowledge of Jewish history and Jewish values and Jewish culture, and it made things much more easy because I realized that you can be a very good Jew and a very decent man, and you don't have to believe in God. You can be a Jew, you don't have to believe in God, and you can be angry with Him, and it makes you even more Jewish. So all these things are, I think it's a privilege. I really think we live in a world where I can only tell it in secret that it is a privilege to be a Jew, because it's almost a racist declaration. Okay, so not everybody is lucky to be a Jew. So, I mean, you can survive. If we survived being Jews, you can also survive not being a Jew. It's not impossible. But it is a privilege, and it is a privilege to be the wandering Jew, like myself. I mean, I could have lived in Israel, I could have decided to live there, have my country, which was a dream of my mother. My mother wanted me to live there and be there. But somehow life has given me a structure in which all my roots are inside of me, and they're traveling with me from one country to the other. So I have no language. I really have no language of mine. I mean, the language that I love is Yiddish. I have nobody to talk in Yiddish. Maybe if I'm fluent in 5 or 6 languages, none of them is a language that I really know that it is mine, that I can say I possess it, that it is the way I would have liked to possess it, and so on. And yet at the same time, this extraordinary freedom of not owing anything to anybody. I don't know, it's very difficult. I mean, you're asking me to give you an answer, and I'm trying to give you an answer why I don't have an answer, which is also very Jewish. So I don't know. I really don't know. This is the end of the story.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Where? you are free, we're going to photograph